Good afternoon, I'm Mariam Zaidi and welcome to Euractiv Digital Debate supported by Giga Europe. Now today we're diving into precision agriculture. What do EU farmers want? A big welcome to everyone who's joining us online, and as always, get involved. Send in your questions or your comments into our Slido chat page along with the name of the panelist it's directed at, and I'll pick out some of the questions for later on in the programme. Now, as the saying goes, you either innovate or you die. Buoyed by the EU Green Deal, more and more of today's farmers are acting more sustainably and adhering to climate neutral practices. A profound rethink of how food is produced and how global food chains are operated is also helping to make farming more resilient and sustainable. Farmers have also identified ways to leverage digital technologies to make existing agricultural practices more precise. For example, 50% of dairy farmers in Europe use software to track and optimize the health of their animals. Now, precision farming ranges from simple, low-cost practices such as replacing sprayer nozzles to avoid overuse of pesticides, to using drones and harnessing big data and AI technology to better understand fluctuations of farming conditions. Farmers then use that data to get the best out of crop yields. Data tells the farmer where best to plant their land and how much water, fuel or fertilizer they need and where. Now, all of this is hugely important because of the added pressure on food security following the pandemic and then, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, from which many crises have now sprung, not at least a cost of living crisis, but another problem for food security. Only 11% of EU farmers are under 40, and coaxing younger farmers in this generation of younger farmers into farming is a challenge. So is precision agriculture the key that unlocks the pressure on global food security and incentivizes young farmers? Well, let's ask the expert. Okay, well, joining us for this debate today are Gaëlle Marion. She's the head of unit of environmental sustainability at DG Agri at the European Commission. Welcome. We also have Franz Bogovic, MEP, who's a Slovenian EPP member of the Agri Committee at the European Parliament. We have Pekka Pesonen, who's the Secretary General at Copa-Cogeca. And then lastly, we have Dickie Carstens, the CEO of My Farm Web. Welcome to you all. And do remember, if there is a problem, you do not need to unmute yourself. We will, of course, deal with your audio here in studio. Now, to allow all of you to introduce yourselves to our online audience, please do so in order of introduction. So I'll ask Gaëlle to go first.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. So, as you've mentioned already in your introduction, the agricultural sector is faced with a double challenge, or I should rather even say a double imperative. First, there is a need for an ecological transition, ensuring the protection of natural resources and fighting climate change. And there is also a need for a continued food production, for food security simply. And both these challenges are closely interlinked, and both rely on a healthy, economically viable agricultural sector. Precision farming comes just at the center of this double challenge. It can maintain the levels of production while using less external input, so having less impact on the environment and the climate. Yet, precision farming requires demanding investments, like sensor technologies to obtain the data from the fields, or specific tools to process the data, and equipment to implement the appropriate actions. And this often implies changes also in the farming practices themselves. So finally, it requires also a lot of new knowledge, of skills, and advices to farmers. And EU farms being mostly small economic structures, the investment capacity is limited, and so support is needed for the rollout of this precision farming. The Common Agricultural Policy supports and will continue to support not just investments, but also the shifts in practices through what we call eco-schemes or even agri-environment management commitments, but also through cooperation by supporting cooperation projects, notably between researchers, advisors and farmers, also trainings and advisory services in general, which are essential for these very modern ways of farming. Other EU programs will also be very important for the uptake of this precision farming. So for research and innovation, there is Horizon Europe, but also Connecting Europe Facility digital program will be a program that will act against digital divides and help ensure high quality connectivity in all parts of Europe, which is essential for precision farming, especially in rural areas and the most remote rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail, and definitely connectivity is something that we will be talking about with you a little bit later on. Okay, next over to our MEP, MEP Bogovic, please go ahead.
Good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for the invitation. We have a debate about a very exciting topic. I think, first of all, precision farming is very important to increase productivity in agri sector. It starts on the fields. We all know and we use these navigation systems and other things. What is very important, there are also more and more machinery which helps us to work on the fields, and also, as it was said, in dairy production, it's very important. Milking cows, it's not easy work, and if robots can help us, it's very important. And also, we can have more cows on farms. This milking can be connected with feeding, and here we can see that through computer we can also reach that that we produce more with less, or that we precisely fit cows at, for example, I am apple producer and my apples goes to this storage, and then robots and also sorting machines which are precise use, and it's really a lot of things to increase this production. This is very important, and we see in many fields. What is also very important today, we all speak about sustainability in agriculture. And here again, it's very important to have good prognosis about diseases, pests. Either these are sensors in the nature, either this is through drones or other tools which we can use, and later application. It means precise application on spraying. And also, what is also important, that this machinery can give us traceability. So it's very important to reach the consumers also with these data that they can trust to the producers. So it's one of very important part, which is today, I think, one of most important, that our production is sustainable and that people knows what we do and that they can follow this. What is also very important is that this is attractive for young farmers. It is again very important that we attract young people to stay on farms. And we know all that here are many challenges also about costs, challenges about this machinery and costs, especially for small farms. Broadband connectivity, it means good networks and other things. So many challenges, but of all, I think it's very important that we all go in this direction and support that all farmers, small, bigger, can use these tools, which are essential for the future of agriculture.
Thank you so much, MEP Bogovic. And we will talk more about your apple producing a bit later on. Over to Pekka Pesonen, please, for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation to join you in this important event of yours. Much has been already said. Gail and Frank, in fact, emptied the bucket of the relevant issues, but I would like to point out that the farming community is very much at the heart. Farmers actually are supposed to deliver. They are putting in practice what we mean by technology implementation of precision farming, or whatever specific question we have. I would like to draw your attention, however, to kind of three elements that we feel very important. First of all, it is very much to facilitate practical management of daily chores of a farm. It's very much about what methods to use, how to allocate inputs, possibly employing certain work assisting roboting techniques, for instance, like Frank pointed out. But however, it is really important that we also gather information and accumulate data from these practices and plan for our future. So with present to future, there's a very strong link with the technologies, and especially when it comes to data and sharing relevant data with other partners, the value chain. And then parallel to these two elements, we have EU CAP, Common Agricultural Policy Administration, and this could actually facilitate also enormously the work of farmers if and when we could develop systems that could actually feed in the relevant data from the farm to the administration without making too much of red tape. It is bringing in advantages, like previous speakers already pointed out, on younger farmers. They tend to be more trained and they are more technology driven. They also encourage farmers to cooperate. They will become active members of farmers' own constituency, cooperatives, producer organizations, you name it. But importantly, and the reason why we are here and Kopan Kožeka is there, is that we would facilitate these technologies and this approach to facilitate family life. It is very much about how to organize oneself in the rural areas, have sufficient coverage, make the necessary investment. And these also create some bottlenecks that hopefully we could also discuss today. It's very much about the internet coverage in the rural areas. It is about farms becoming more capital intensive. Therefore, we need to have competitive financial sector there to support agriculture as much as the CAP has done that from the ministry's side. So these are just some questions that I would like to raise during the debate of today.
Okay, thank you so much, Becca. Finally over to Dickie Carstens then for your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Miriam. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. It's always nice to be involved in this very important topic. So the work we do as MyFarmWeb is in Africa, Europe, in a couple of global countries, is basically focusing to introduce digital as an enabler, supporting productivity and sustainability. Now these two agendas is most of the time seen as opposite sides or not being favoring each other. Now, if we look at the productivity side, farmers is basically caught up in this two very important priorities. Is basically zero hunger, making sure that there's enough quality food for productive, and that relies on productivity services. So it means farmers need to be and act more productive, making use of technology and digitalization as an enabler. In order to support that, irrigation, water utilization, predictive weather models, soil classification, soil chemical analysis, making sure that you start measuring, and as soon as we start measuring, we can start managing, and that is the main objective of what we are aiming for, is in order to use digital to help us as a decision support to making more informed decisions. If we look in what's happening in the world currently, we see that the productivity side from practices is gonna come from farmers that's actually using the same amount of land and just becoming more productive on that same piece of land, and therefore you're gonna rely on digital and technology to support you, and that's about 85% of future growth is going to come from it. Only 15% will come from land use, more land use, as we're capped on the amount of land available, as climate change and all kind of external factors is playing a major impact on that. On the other side, you've got the sustainability part, which is very favorable for a lot of farmers, but it needs to be concurrent with each other. So obviously farmers is got a joint target to reduce the agri contribution towards your carbon emissions, and that plays into your whole sustainability footprint, making sure that we've got safe food safety, making sure we play into the circular economy of having more inputs available, but using it more effective, contributing to less cost, less inflation, and obviously contributing to the environmental practices better. Now that basically concludes into the three value drivers that we promote, and that's access to finance, which means that all farmers are asked to carry this risk and basically being involved to finance all these practices. And we know that farmers say, well, let's participate and see how the whole value chain can share in this associated investment. The second one is access to markets, is if we can have better traceability in order to have food safety programs. We believe that the whole value chain can support in that. And then lastly is making more informed decisions. And that's where we believe farmers can hugely benefit from digital solutions, as example, MyFarmWeb, in order to have various data sources, various sensors on the farm, on the fields, collecting data, getting that data in one place, in one platform, in order to overlay and make better decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Dickie. And let's open up the debate then. And Dickie, just building upon what you were talking about there, how digital technology can really help farmers to find solutions. And you also brought up food security. Before we start talking about what the best practices are for farmers, let's also sort of take like a temperature check or a scene setter. How far back did the pandemic and then obviously all the crises that have come through the war in Ukraine, how has this really affected farming and food security? And would you say digital solutions are really the solution to help farmers progress further?
Yes, thank you. I truly believe that all the circumstances together is basically a perfect storm. So farmers really haven't got the benefit of the impact of the post-COVID, having the impact of the social economical environment currently. You refer to the war in Ukraine, the impact on input costs, and obviously the pressure on all value chains. So that had a major impact on farmers. But I would like to take us to a very recent report that was conducted by Vodafone, and one of the very interesting feedbacks on that report was how positive farmers are about the future of farming. So we were really very surprised about that. About 89% of farmers believe that technology is very important and they will depend on that for future purposes. In the same breath, there was about 90% of European farmers that mentioned the importance of being sustainable as well as productive. So with all this external impact, that's really basically a burden on farmers, and farmers needs to carry that cost while being still productive, while making sure there's enough food to be consumed, are carrying all this risk. And I think that's one of the main areas that farmers are asking. Listen, to do this, we fully support this, but it comes at a cost. And do we as farmers need to carry this cost on our own, or how can we share in the bigger value chain in order to make funding available, to make partnership or associations available to help us, to help the world having enough food?
Mr. Bogovic, for you to follow up on that then, cost is obviously an issue. So can farmers create, food that does cost people less, that causes less inflation? Can farmers really deliver on that? And is precision farming the tool that can help them achieve that better than, say, traditional farming?
First few words on the previous question about this crisis. What I want to say, COVID crisis accelerate the knowledge about and need of connectivity in rural areas. In past, I think it was sometimes many debates that we have this digital gap, but perhaps in rural areas we don't need so much. But through COVID crisis, it's clear how important it is that we have good connectivity in rural areas. The second, what COVID crisis also bring us, that more people now speak about these digital tools. People are more skilled because it was necessary to get these skills. And also what happened in the COVID crisis, that these small digital platforms which connect producers and consumers were developed and also were in use a lot. So I think there are some good points of this or what lessons which we learned through COVID crisis. If we speak about war in Ukraine, one of the important things is that we again speak about food security, because before everybody thought, in Europe especially, that it's no question about food security, but now we see that there are many challenges and it's necessary to take care about food security all the time, also in such a time as we are now, and also in the normal time, if I can say. About costs and cheaper food, for sure, if we use, for example, as I said, dairy robots, if we use a feeding machine for cows, it's more precise and also cheaper, because it's not so easy to milk 70 cows a day, what one robot may do. I also said I'm apple producer, and my apples are sorted on the sorting machine with 21 sensors, and it's all parameters you can use. So for sure, through this better productivity, we influence. It's also the result of this is also cheaper food. So the pressure on the food prices all the time, and through these new tools, to new machinery, we can do this. And it was said that we can increase on one side productivity, and on the other side also sustainability, what is very important.
And MEP Bogovic, if I may, could you talk us through a little bit more about your journey as an apple producer? When did you decide to turn to precision farming and more digital technologies to aid what you're doing?
First, what is important is prognosis of diseases. This is something to use these tools to have exact prognosis when it's necessary to use some pesticides, and so this is one of very important things for which is also many tools and also equipment that we can have precise time for spraying. Also, there are these different machinery for precise application. What is very important also, to use less pesticides. It was mentioned about irrigation system. We also irrigate this precision irrigation system through drop system, and it's necessary drop irrigation system, and it's very important to have clear prognosis when it is necessary to add water, and that we use as less as is possible water, but that we start on time, and that we the application and that we add water really at when we need it, and as much as it is necessary. So it's necessary to be connected with meteorological prognosis, and also to put sensors in the soil and follow the water in the soil. Then, as I said, it's very important about managing this for sorting, for other things when we store in storages for apples. There is many things when it's also used. So we all know that traceability is very important. My apples go through one company in my region, and we also export this also to Great Britain, for example. And traceability of apples is very important. And once there was mistake at the end, we got the question which pesticides we use, but at the end, as I said, it was mistake in the system, but it was nothing wrong with our apples. But all robots and other things allow us that from a Tesco store in Great Britain, they recognized and they knew that this was apple which was produced in my orchard. So in many topics we now use these tools which are connected with data, with robots, with sensors, with other things, and all this also influence on our productivity and quality of production, as I said, also on sustainability.
Okay, let me come to Gael. MEP Bogovic seems like the perfect example of a precision farmer, someone who's using that technology. But talk us give us a little bit of background about the current attitudes and adoption rates for precision farming agriculture tools across Europe's farms, and talk us through perhaps the European Commission's role in shaping all of this.
Hello. As regards the current uptake of precision farming, it's not that we have very specific figures, but I was provided one figure for 6 member states, which was Belgium, Germany, Greece, Netherlands, and UK, so outside the EU, but still a close country, with 22% of adoption of precision farming. And this may even be still an upper estimate. So it's still a small share of farmers who adopt this kind of modern technologies, but still very encouraging. As I said, we are supporting the adoption of these production methods because they clearly have the double advantage of being more resource efficient, so using less resources, having less impact on the environment, less impact on the climate, and allowing farmers to use less inputs, so to continue to be competitive and to continue to produce. So we are really on a model there that is very win-win. But as we mentioned also earlier, it requires knowledge, it requires advice, it requires investments, new technologies, and these technologies need to be adapted to the small size of farms. So it's not from one day to another that farmers can shift completely to these new systems. And often, beyond the investments and the advice, there's also some changes in the practice, so in the whole farm organization. So it's inevitably a relatively slow process that we are accompanying with funding support, advisory support that can be funded also for the member states to put in place. I would say that because it's still a relatively slow process and that it will take time to accompany all farmers on this way, there are also, in complement to precision farming, other types of practices that we are supporting under the Common Agricultural Policy, which can be complementary to precision farming. I was thinking of water because we mentioned irrigation earlier. And for example, one thing is very good to make the irrigation system more efficient with a dropping system that will allow to spare water, or even detection that will allow to know exactly when water is needed and where. But in complement to that, there can be practices on soil which can help better retain water. There can be some changes in crops, or certain crops that can be better to use in places where there is water scarcity. There can be the use of landscape features that can help retain more humidity. These kind of things are also promoted under the CAP to go in complement, and things which are probably easily accessible for farmers and immediately.
Pek, I'll come to you now for a quick follow-up on what you've just heard there from Gael. Do you feel as if the European Commission does do enough for farmers, and how much could the new CAP further things along and to help farmers to innovate better?
Well, that's a tricky question, because if I say that Commission has done enough, that would be a wrong answer from a lobby organization. But nevertheless, it would actually, the 22% is very close to what we tend to say, that roughly speaking, 1/4 of farmers are doing fairly well economically. And it would be really interesting to see whether we could have a link between the two. What would be the economic stand, and especially level of cooperation, level of investment of these farmers that actually use precision farming or digital agenda, or whatever is the form that and format we define that. But it is important that it is linked with those strategies that actually Gael was kind of hinting in referring to the CAP, because the technology is not a let's say standalone tool to make things better. It is how to apply that, and where to apply, and what is the reason behind it. And I think Frank had a very good point when he pointed out that his apples go all the way to the UK retailers, and this as a strategic approach is crucially important for the application of these technologies, because it delivers directly some added value that Frank could benefit from the value chain. So if I have to respond to your question, Mariam, it would be to linking the two in a more concrete manner. So can we demonstrate as European Union, as the Commission, that these 22% have made it differently, perhaps better in economic terms, or in, for instance, cooperation, and then go from that in order to modify also what we have now, national strategic plans, to encourage farmers, in case there is a need for that, to go for further use of precision farming and digital agenda in their activities.
And Gail, would you like to add an extra comment onto what Pekka has just said as well, to react to it?
Yes, no, of course, we could try to make the links. I'm not sure it has been made, so I cannot say this is there is this strict correlation. But yes, as we mentioned, it has a cost to switch to precision farming if you're not yet engaged in this kind of practices. It has a cost, and it requires some investments. So clearly, we don't expect that all farmers will be able, without support, to switch to this kind of practices. And clearly, the Common Agricultural Policy has planned these possibilities of investment support, of accompanying new practices for farmers. Now, we also rely in our framework, in our policy frameworks, on member states' choices. It's also for the member states to build this, their own strategies, so to identify their own needs in their own member states, and to target and design very specifically the support schemes in their own member states. We have a policy now that is not so prescriptive, that leaves a certain margin to the member states to adapt the support tools to their country. So we share the responsibility with the member states in finding the right instruments to support the farmers and make sure they can uptake this kind of precision farming practices. And we will continue to work with member states on a regular basis. We are launching now new CAP strategic plans, but clearly there will be a dialogue during the 5 years of these programs. And we will continue to follow up on the uptake of this kind of practices, among others.
Okay, so we're talking about potential EU or Commission strategies. Dickie, your thoughts, and also if you'd like to talk to us a little bit more about this study you had of African and member states, I believe.
Maybe, yeah, to summarize, I think thank you for the panel speakers. I think we really heading in the right direction. We're saying the right things. If we can have one input of data source, and that's a responsibility of the farmer, and the farmer can have various benefits towards that, exactly to the example of providing a retailer with information and a product. It put the farmer to an advantage, which means farmers will automatically start engage in digitization, or because they can see how it adds value to the value chain, and so can the value chain in the private sector start supporting that, which we need. We need to prove the value for the farmer to participate, and I think that's a very nice example of how it really supports farmers. So now, thank you for that. I think that's very important. Also, to the adoption, I think it also does play to the age of farmers. We know that farmers is quite at a high average age, but as we see younger farmers coming into the industry, they're more educated towards specific areas in agriculture, and also tend to be more friendly and more open towards digitalization and technology. So yeah, that's from that side, which I can really agree with the rest of the panel.
Okay, and
then
Pekka,
on the
sorry, carry on. Go ahead, yeah.
No, just to your second question on the study. So no, the study was very important for us to understand what does farmers require, what's their needs, what do they require what's their asks, because we can sit and we can build solutions that's beautiful, but if it doesn't add value to the farmer, if it doesn't support the last mile, which is the farmer, then it's worth nothing. So we actually started engaging with farmers, understanding what farmers want, what's their pain points, and we're building solutions from that side. So the study was conducted over 13 countries, Europe and sub-Saharan African countries, which included a couple of questions just regarding using digital technologies for your farming practices. And the outcome was really astonished, because I think we under the impression that that very little farmers are aware of it and uses it, but there's much more, because it's more than just one sensor on a field. If we take, for instance, example of a climate impact and the weather prediction indices that can be used by insurance companies, we've got the ability to provide insurance to millions of small farmers in Africa, just because we've got access to Earth observation, and we've got a ground truthing because we've got someone on the field taking a sensor or a measurement, and that supports us to give products and services to farmers that's actually been outlined and not part of the formal structure. So I think that's another thing that digital brings to the industry, is that there's a lot of small farmers and small SME companies that provide businesses to that small farmers, but they're a bit isolated in the rural areas, and digitalization brings that together. And I think that's basically to one of the guest panel speakers, Mr. Brokovic, what you've mentioned, how actually digitalization took it a step further in the COVID area, where we started to rely on being connected without being physically there.
Dickie, just to follow up, I mean, obviously the threats that farmers face in Africa, especially with drought, so the problems that they face are a lot different to the EU, but given the support and tools you've given to farmers in Africa, is any of that translatable to EU farmers? What have you found?
Yeah, for sure. So MyFarmWeb is our commercial farm solution, and there's a very close relation, because the environmental impact of climate change is got a vast impact on both. If we have a look at the Southern Europe, how that was affected by the current droughts, and the impact on that, and the vast extent that farmers needs to adjust in order to mitigate that, means that no one is set free by the impact of climate change. And also this whole recent economic and geopolitical shocks, and the impact of energy prices, it had an impact on every farmer, both Europe and Africa. And the similarity is that there's a lot of small farmers in Europe that also are depending on support and advice in some sort of way, where access isn't frequently available to them. So I think there's quite a overlay in your smaller farm units to the African and Europe, but even for your bigger commercial businesses, farmers are really more educated. Farmers want to participate in making sure that we farm more sustainable, we are more productive, we comply to what are required from us as a producer, in order to make sure that the food on the shelf is of value and is preferred by the customer.
And Pekka, just to follow up with you then, since we are talking about the impact of climate change, and Dickie there was talking about the impact on small farmers, is that something that has also been felt for smaller farmers here in the EU? And when we're not just, for small farmers as well, it's not just about the impact of climate change. How much of an impact was the COVID-19 pandemic on smaller farmers? Were you seeing a lot more closures or a lot more farmers struggling? And what has your organisation done to perhaps help those smaller farmers?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying that COVID-19 had a significant impact on small-scale farmers, or small farmers in particular, or I shouldn't say that it had an impact, but it was more or less like secondary impact through the changes in the consumer patterns. It was very much about the farmers not being able to move freely like any other citizen because of the COVID restrictions. So what I would see important in this respect is that if we talk about it's a weather-related phenomena, which is very much the same in Europe as much as it was in Africa, or it has been historically in Africa, probably much more present. It is very much about those small steps, because we talk about millions of farmers, even here in Europe. And so it is something that while we aim at high, a very ambitious agenda in terms of what the farming sector can do for instance, climate change, we need to accept the fact that we have to do this in the smaller steps. And that's why it is important that we get as much of that farming community involved with these improvements, and it needs to be modified to applied in a way that it could be applied in farms as much as possible all across, because that way we would have a huge volume acting to the same direction. And I think in this respect, between the two, COVID-19 and the weather-related phenomena, it is obvious that the weather is the driver of any farmer much more than even big impact of COVID-19 as such, because it comes to the skin of a farmer, and it has a very profound impact on most of the production sectors anyway. So I would see that this would be the reality, I suppose, quite close to the African reality too.
Okay, and Gael, just to follow up then, does the European Commission also see climate as the highest threat to this sector as well?
It's clearly among the highest threats. That's very clear, and we know we need to act to change as quickly as possible. But I also recognize, and I think I was saying that we need to have farmers on board. We need them, in fact, to act with us. So it's important that we take into account the feasibility of what we propose to address climate change issues. But as he also said, and that we see as well ourselves, is that farmers are themselves obviously very aware of the climate changes. At least we don't have to explain that the climate change is here, that it's real. They know, they feel the effects, they suffer from climate change, and so we see that on this topic. There are a lot of policy measures that are easily accepted because the challenge is known, and the awareness of the need to address this challenge is there. But we need to also make sure that what we propose in terms of measures is sustainable for the farmers and for their own viability. In the field of climate change, where I don't know how much we derive from precision farming to climate change, but there are a lot of measures that can be relatively quickly beneficial for farmers as well, like storing carbon in soil. So increasing the organic matter in the soil is good for climate. It helps storing more carbon, but it's also good for the soil itself and for the soil fertility, so for the yield. So we have these areas where there are clearly win-win results, where it's easy to engage farmers. There are other areas where it can be a bit more challenging when we speak about reducing methane emissions. That requires more efforts than benefits in the first place, but it's inevitable.
And Mr. Bogovic, perhaps you could follow up. I mean, earlier on, I think it was in your opening statement, you were saying that younger people are more aware, for example, of things like climate change, able to use technology. So, as someone who, of course, is producing apples, what sort of advice do you have for these younger farmers, and how do you energize them and get them involved in precision agriculture and farming?
First, I want to say 2 words about small farms. I think it's very important that we all take care about them, and also that we support this collective use of some tools. Here, I think cooperatives can be good organizations which can help us. Also, companies which prepare solutions that they take care in, they have in mind that there are small farms and it's necessary to think about this. Here is also another view which is connected with small farm, and it's also connected with communication of European Commission, and also about my activities. I work on these smart villages, and here is this. I want to say this, that we see holistic on the rural areas, and that we see also some help and also additional income for farmers in another sectors like energy sector, mobility, tourism, care for older people, e-health. And here are again some e-tools, and it's combined, that we combine precision farming with other digitalization in the rural areas, which altogether ensure the income for farms. And this is, and for rural areas, the people stay there. This is in this long-term vision for rural areas, is this very, very important topic. And I think it's connected with precision farming at all, as I said, with this digitalization in rural areas. We usually start with connectivity and other questions and new tools. Yes, as you said, young farmers are those who, and I said also in my previous intervention, among young farmers, we recognize so many activities. As I said, I work on this smart villages topic in Slovenia and also in other countries. I organized more than 30 roundtables with people, and I was surprised how many good solutions people have. And these are these small tools, and usually this is among young farmers. There arrived to me a guy who works on the drones and use drones for prognosis for pesticides and also for fertilization. Another small company from Slovenia, they also prognose the diseases, and in I don't know, on 5 million hectares all around the world. It's 25 times more hectares than we have arable land in Slovenia, and they have tools connected with prognose phenophase of plants and other things. Digital platform for selling, this direct connection and dialogue with consumers. So I can say that it's really there are really brilliant ideas, and as we see in CAP and other politics, we must encourage and invest in this. And I think we have many other also proposals in also inside Farm to Fork, in which we have proposals for reduction of pesticides, reduction of fertilizers, other things. But I think it's not the right way. If we will work with people, especially with young farmers, they will go in this direction because they believe in this, consumers believe in this, and through this positive approach, we will solve many problems and also attract young people to stay in farming, and also have this contact with consumers, and at the end of the day, also with good effect on sustainability and this topic. So for sure, this is great that we have in the CAP more support for young farmers, more support for innovation for these tools, and it's very important. I tried also in this for this financial perspective to have a special tool in also in regional development policy, in a regional fund for digitalization in rural areas. Unfortunately, at the end, on Council and also Commission, they didn't agree another allocation of 5% for these topics, digital smart villages and this. I think if we will go in this direction, we will be surprised how many good ideas are in rural areas, and people work on this. And so overall is to recognize this and support to make this that more and more farmers will use these tools. And as I said, I will finish with this. It's really very important that all the time we take care about small farms. They must have access for these tools. Otherwise, we will have the problem that people will leave farming on small farms because they will not be competitive, and it will be not easy. I think that our goal is that young and small farms also stay in Europe.
Okay, so Pekka, let's build upon that then. If I'm a young person who's watching this debate, and I'm listening to what all of you have said about all of these great ideas for precision farming, what would you say would be the best way for me to start? What sort of common tools are there? The best way for me, perhaps, I don't necessarily have too much money either, so I'm going to have a small farm as well. What would be the best way for me to work going forward then?
I think Frank has a point in what he described through his Smart Village initiative, and especially for those millions of farmers and also young farmers that come to the sector, they tend to be rather small. And it is important, especially if they don't have proper access to capital or agricultural land or the inputs, in a sense that they would just simply widen their scope and increase their output. It would be important to go through all possible co-products, activities that actually support the farming activity per se. And that means that it could be like precision farming, it would be digital agenda, it would be closer connection to the consumers, it may be better use of co-products that may be available on the farm, including the actual production. It could be something that could generate and push the actual farming activity to the better economic performance. And so I think it should be like it's a group of activities or number of activities that should be used effectively to the same direction. And in this respect, the Smart Village concept is quite useful because it gives us an opportunity to endeavor outside the scope of the core agricultural activity and find out the ways of either making the agricultural activity more performant, economically viable, and or developing something parallel to this so that the farming family could make a living. So the point is, Marion, that like you said, if you don't have capital, then you have to deal with the issues that you have at hand. And it is in our interest in Copan Cogeca, and most probably also people like Frank, that these families make a living in the rural communities. And that is the fundamental element that we also position ourselves when we support initiatives like the Smart Villages initiative.
Okay, so another proponent for Smart Villages. Tiki, coming to you then, if again, using the same example of someone with a small budget, how could they also use AI?
So I think to the question of where do you start, it's always, and I think we refer to, we need to start small. We need to start small steps and understand where it comes from. So in agriculture, there's a basic principle that we support from my perspective, and that is to understand your soil. So without understanding your soil, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you need to do. You don't know what's required from you. So we really support the initiative where you use digitalization, a digital tool, with service providers, knowledge expert service providers. I think Frank also mentioned it a bit earlier. Is you can't separate the two. You need digital tools to support your knowledge expert to make a decision that really can impact your orchard. And that's typically what we are standing from, and what we are promoting is that we are building this a platform where you've got various data sets and information available, and it doesn't require you to have all the data set available day one. It's starting from the primary or the most important and building on that. And it doesn't mean it's a lot of money from day one. It's it's the question is start. Because if you start participating in this, start building that layer, start building information about your farm, about your soil, you will understand your crop better, you will understand your performance of your yield better, you will understand how your soil uses your water, and all the impacts is basically measured at one point. And that can be done through a marketplace where you get various data sets getting together. You can share it with knowledge experts. Knowledge expert can support you, and that's what's important. I do support the initiative where we need to keep the small farmers on their farm. We need to get them productive. We need to support the SME that support that farm in order to be productive, because that's a major amount of farms in Europe. And I think if we can drive the initiative where we can support small farmers, commercial farmers also, and small SMEs to participate and use these initiatives and use the tools available in order to transact in that data, it will end up with the farmer having better advice for his specific circumstances on his farm.
Training your farmers on how to use that data is also really important in the work that you do.
So for sure, yeah. So training, that's a beautiful thing about technology. You've got the ability to take information, knowledge, training anywhere. If there's a cell phone or a mobile and there's connectivity, you can take anything to that farmer on his farm. And that's a beautiful thing about the technology that we really embrace and we use in order to support the farmer, but also the knowledge expert. Because it's just a reality that there's the knowledge experts are far in between. They can't be on every farm. And if the farmer needs to rely on them to visit the farm on a weekly basis, it's probably not going to happen. And it's not financially viable to do that. But now with technology, you can actually take the knowledge expert to the farmer and vice versa without having someone to drive out to the field himself.
Great. And Pekka, you wanted to follow up and talk about connectivity, I understand.
Well, actually, I forgot one important element in also what Frank pointed out, and that is cooperation. Like, especially if you have shortages in terms of your own capital, from your capital side. But then you are willing to make your investment into production of whatever agricultural commodity or services, and then the cooperation with your colleagues in the farming sector in a cooperative or producer organization or whatever means that, for instance, the CAP is providing is crucially important. Most of European farmers actually are involved with cooperatives in one form or another. And that has been a big driver for us in Europe. And we believe that also internationally, this could bring benefits to the millions and hundreds of millions of relatively small enterprises that we have in agriculture. You can't just simply go out and make an investment, 1,000-hectare farm. You need to deal with what you have at hand. And in most cases, it is very much about rather low level of capital. Joining forces with your neighbors, colleagues, other farmers, and creating added value through that cooperation is truly, truly valuable. And we need to also point out that this brings in the element of innovation to the play. If you pool your resources, you would be able also to invest into product development, which would be completely out of reach for individual farmers. And in this respect, we have dozens and dozens of good examples in Europe, and we are very proud of them. This is fundamentally a big part of European agricultural success, if I can call it that.
Okay, I will go to questions in a moment, but there's just one last question I wanted to ask Gail, because I know it's something that you also wanted to talk about, which was connectivity. Talk us through the conundrum that is living in the countryside and people having, well, quite rubbish network connections. Why do we still have this problem? And that really inhibits rural farming, doesn't it?
Yes, no, it's a fundamental issue, and I think Frank also raised it, that during COVID time it appeared even more clearly that our connectivity became totally vital to all of us. At some point, we were even saying in our discussions where it should become a need as the connectivity of water and electricity. We should have connectivity everywhere for everyone. Absolutely, it's a very important aspect for the development of rural areas. We have published last year a long-term vision for rural areas, and it has a lot of aspects. But it's important, and I think even in this debate on precision farming and on the future of farmers and of young farmers, the attractivity of the job of farmers depends on the livelihood in rural areas. And as part of this livelihood, I think it's clear that everybody expects to have a connection now in Europe, and to a good connection. So the digital gap is closing, and with, I think, a lot of EU funding also involved in closing these digital gaps between urban and rural areas. But what is still at stake is a good quality connection. So it's really this very fast connection, broadband. So there I'm less of an expert in this field, but obviously a very good quality connection is very important. So as I mentioned, we have a program, and there will be a new call, I understand, for February 2023 for applications for this program on Connecting Europe facility, with really the will to address the digital divides where they exist, and to help connect well all the last remote village. And that will be really enabling factor for a modern farming, but not just, also for people living in rural areas, not just for farmers, obviously.
Okay, so February 2023, mark your books if you live in a village and you have poor Wi-Fi. Okay, let's go to questions then. We have a question from Mark Moore, and we'll go to MEP Bogovic for this one. Mark says, I've been doing precision farming for over 30 years and it's not easy because of incompatibility between technology. How do we as an industry join up technology products so we deliver practical precision farming solutions and systems to farmers? Mr. Bogovic.
If I understood correctly, the question is, can you repeat, please?
Sure. So Mark says he's been doing, he's a precision farmer for over 30 years. He says it's not easy because of the incompatibility between technology. So he's asking, how do you join up the products so we deliver practical precision farming systems and solutions to farmers? So it's basically the technology versus the system.
Yeah, for sure. We started with very easy solutions. I don't know, very easy. It's not easy, but I don't know, GPS and other things which farmers start 10, 15 years ago. And more and more complicated systems are here, and how to connect this. This is always a question. So I can agree with him that it's not easy, and it's also not possible to find easy solutions how to solve this problem. But I can say, for example, as I spoke about some systems which are connected in feeding cows, for example, connected with milking robots, other things. So there are some solutions which are made by some companies which are specialized in some specific areas. But for other, I understand that there are solutions which are not connected, and it's not very cheap then to use and to buy everything. So I don't have a quality answer, because if there is a quality answer, then this question was not necessary. So, but I think this is the one of the things, as we spoke before, how to work to prepare this user-friendly solutions and also solutions which will be compatible. Now we have solutions per partners, and I don't know when we will make a system, but as I said, for example, diseases prognosis, spraying, there are some systems which work and are compatible. Perhaps my colleague in the panel who is more focused on this solution, Mr. Dickis, has better answer than me on this question.
And I think he wants to comment. Dickie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. I think you're spot on with that. There might not be the correct answer available yet, but what we're clearly seeing, and out of my experience and what we're getting from a farmer, and Frank, you will agree that farmers are not at the point anymore where they want 8 different apps on their mobile and jump between the two and have no ability to overlay data from your irrigation to your yield monitor or from your pest disease to your weather. You actually requiring to have that data on one single point of call, and that's, I think, the new initiative that will come to light, especially in the agriculture, where we see that data that's been collected is valuable, but it's just so more valuable if it's collided. In isolation, it gives you a index, but as soon as we take it together, it really gives you a bigger picture of really what's happening on your farm. So more and more farmers are reaching out and is asking this question, and that's why we see more and more digital marketplaces, precision agriculture marketplaces, exactly as MyFarmWeb, where your agnostic marketplace, you keep the third party service provider, which is a knowledge expert in the offering or the solution or the service they provide, but in isolation, it's only one data point. You would like 3 or 4 or maybe 8 of your service providers. You want all their digital information on one point of call, one place available. And I think that's the new initiative that's coming to light. We will see precision agricultural marketplaces that integrate with these third parties. And it will just give more access, better access to the SMEs and to the farmer and to the service providers.
Okay, so those are the good sides about data, but there are also risks. And this is a question for Gael from Pauline. She says, the opening statements were all about the potential benefits of data-driven high-tech farming, but what about the risks or drawbacks in terms of data ownership, accumulation of power in large companies, and general liability of advice when corporate interests are not necessarily sustainable of just? I'm not quite sure what that of just is, but yeah. Go ahead, Gael.
Thank you. I think on our side we're not organizing the systems ourselves, of course, but we would rather advise for keeping indeed separate agronomic data, so that are really useful for the farmers, or they can be shared with other farmers, from possibly administrative data, and certainly not to be used anywhere for any type of purposes. How should this be ensured? Then I'm not fully sure how the exact security of the data system is designed in each of these different technologies, but we understand the point, and we also think that it's important that farmers feel secure with the use of the data, and that they have guarantees for the use of their data, that it would remain private if it's for private purposes, or that it's shared only to the other entities with whom it's clearly agreed that it can be shared. Sometimes it can be useful to share the data along the food chain, but certain data certainly have to remain private. So these are technological things. Things that yes, needs to be agreed with the providers themselves of the technologies, but clearly we take the point that this reassurance for the users that how the data will be used by who is very important. So I would say I take the note. I don't have the exact solution for
and
the.
Pekka, do your farmers also feel that there is an issue when it comes to data?
Yes, of course. And we, together with our other stakeholders, we did this exercise a few years ago during the previous commission, and we developed a code of good practice at European level for data sharing. And this brought in, I think, 11 stakeholder groups at European level with strong support of the Commission services, Commissioner Hogan at the time. And we certainly identified the need for kind of preparatory work in offsetting some of the risks that we saw coming. And I think it's fair to say that if the EU institutions, the member states, do not follow this close enough, we will end up having a competition policy problem, because the accumulation, especially in the hands of very few operators of relevant data within the value chain, would go against the interest of society and definitely against the interest of farmers in general.
Thank you so much. Okay, so you've got 5 minutes left. And as a last question, which I'll ask all of us panelists to wrap up with, we have a question from Jurgi. And he says, well, first of all, he says, thanks for the session. Thanks, Jurgi. And he asks, can we have 3 bullet points, the 3 most important as a summary? And this is for all panelists, so please reply to this. The first point is, what do EU farmers want? New tools, I mean, from precision agriculture. What do they see as the top 3 most important needs? We've heard several options, possibilities, but what did they say? I've got a little bit confused with that one myself. But I think essentially what Jurgi is asking for is 3 main bullet points for the 3 most important needs or asks for precision farmers. And if we could start with Gael, please.
Okay. I would say that, from what I retained from today, that precision farming needs to be rolled out and implemented with full support from the farmers themselves. So they need to have the benefits of that for their family, for themselves, and for their farm and their future. The second point that I retained is that this digitization of agriculture can be much more than an individual step at farm level. It's also about cooperation along the food chain, but not just. We said also among farmers, exchanging experiences, benefiting from demonstrations from neighbors, being in contact with advisors. So a lot about networking, cooperation, exchange of knowledge is really inherent to this topic. And finally, I think the third point that came for me very prominently by all of us, we all agreed, but that certainly this precision farming should not be a niche development for only the highest performers in agriculture. It should concern all types of farms, should be made accessible to all. I'll say that's the 3 points.
Thank you so much, Gael. Over to MEP Bokovic. If you could also include into your answer 3 bullet points, 3 sort of key points that you think anyone entering into precision farming should be considering or thinking about doing.
First, take care that we will have connectivity in rural areas and skilled people. Second, be focused on young farmers, also on small farmers, and also prepare user-friendly solutions so that they can use and they can start. And the third, for me, it's very important that we have a holistic approach on rural areas, that we also are focused on additional activities which brings enough big income on farms and also enough jobs in rural areas, so that the goal of smart villages, populated rural areas will be realized.
Okay, thank you so much. And then over to Pekka next.
Well, clearly we need to have transparency, especially the ones for those people who enter the market. Why do we do this? what are the societal expectations, and then we need to enable these through the EU policies, relevant policies like CAP. And the third element would be that we need to be very clear with the benefits that these individual farmers would get. So if you say that, well, you do this for greater good, I don't think it's good enough excuse. We need to be very precise to say that this is how you would be able to improve your living economically and making it more, let's say, acceptable for all parties, and especially the farmers themselves.
Okay, thank you so much, Pekka. And then lastly to Dickie, any final thoughts and advice to farmers?
Maybe to the 3 points that you mentioned, I think what we can take out of this is farmers need support to go on the digital journey. That support might be on a financial perspective, it might be on a training perspective, but I think also a good motivation on the benefit for the farmer and why you need to participate in this, because it's a dual purpose. It's for productivity, but it's also for enhancing the data in the value chain. And then I fully agree. Don't leave the small farmers behind. They contribute enormously to our food basket, and it's going to be we're going to be more reliant on them for future purposes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to all the panelists. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for all of you for participating and for sharing your thoughts on precision farming. I'm Mariam Zadi, and to all of our viewers, thank you for watching. Take care and bye-bye.